great to see everyone. I'm Ray Hsu. If we are experiencing any sort of technical difficulties, please use our chat so then we can know that we can help you. Okay, request, here's a request for you all. Please turn on your video for this event so then we can create a sense of community if this is accessible to you. You can use the chat for questions and also for sharing insights. We'll have time for questions at the end of each of our presentations. So first off, I want to say thank you so much for making it. There have been 360 signups for this event, which makes it the biggest event that we've ever had as the AI product management community of practice at the Toronto Product Management Association. That's incredibly exciting to me. I'm Ray Hsu, and I'm going to be your host for this community-led session. Welcome to this event. This session is building an MVP for AI product. And we are honored to have as our guests, Julian Sara Joseph and Rudra Roy Choudhury. Okay, and I'm going to say a bit about both of them. So Julian Joseph, a distinguished product leader in the AI ML domain, presents a background spanning retail, healthcare, cloud, and telecom. She's currently the CIO product manager for the Generative AI platform, handling innovation accelerators and engineering efforts to architect the bedrock for all Gen AI products, poised to shape the experiences of over 100,000 employees and at TELUS. Prior to her role at TELUS, Julian was at Google, where she was involved in sculpting data to AI workflows on an unparalleled scale. The second guest that we are honored to have is Rudra Choudhury. Rudra is a seasoned product manager at Tubi with 6 years of experience building AI and automation products for B2B. He has worked in different cross-functional roles, including R&D and consulting, for moving on to Tubi, where he currently leads Gen AI and automation products to scale Tubi's content platforms. Academically, Rudra holds a engineering in engineering management from Cornell University and an MS in electrical engineering from IIT Madras. Outside of his day job, Rudra is a startup advisor at the Health Innovation Hub, University of Toronto, and a senior member at IEE, and a published author and featured speaker at international conferences. He's also passionate about mentoring aspiring candidates to build a career in product management and navigate US talent visas. Julian and Rudra, I am absolutely thrilled to have both of you here on today. I imagine that our guests are here, our audience is thrilled to have you here too. Thank you so much for being here. So a bit of a rundown of how this is going to look like. First off, we are going to have Julian present, and then at the end, we are going to be asking more details about your work, and then we will be grabbing questions from the participants in chat. Okay, with that in mind, Julian, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me just go ahead and quickly share a screen so we can not waste any time. Do you see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Also, I know it's late at EST. Folks in Vancouver, I know it's very sunny and we're trying to just go out and make the most of this summer. Thank you for joining me. This is a quick intro on who I am. Thank you for that intro, Ray. So I've been working with data science, machine learning, AI products pretty much all my life because of the education in computer science. It has been my interest since graduation, and I haven't had the time to do any masters like Rudra, but this is what I've been working on. So we'll quickly get started into understanding how whatever I have learned through the products that I've built. I hope this will be interactive enough and we can have a discussion. I'm also learning. We will cover these topics here, which is mainly why Gen AI has been the missing piece, because at TELUS, most of my work is focused around Gen AI. And I'll try to share a framework because I know product managers, we love frameworks, and some tips that seems to have worked with our team for the past 14 months as we have been building this product and platform, and how we are going to market from TELUS itself. And also share a few ways on how you can do some hands-on experimentation as well, because I think it's definitely great that all of you have shown the interest, and Gen AI is for everyone, and you can all learn from this. So by doing it, let me just do a quick poll on Slido.com. If you all are on your laptops or your phones, you could just quickly go to Slido.com and enter this code, which is 2296155. It is a simple way for me to understand how many of you are, let me just move this over. I seem to have way too many things. Yeah, I'm presenting it. 2296155, and you should be able to see this. How familiar are you all with the following? LLMs, product management, business strategies, or just software and data engineering? I'm trying to see you all here. A lot of you are into product management. Some of you have some familiarity with LLMs. That is good to know. I thank you so much. So since the majority of the vote is with PM, let me go forward faster and just quickly give you an understanding of what our LHF stands for. How many of you remember a thing like this? This is, I know a lot of us might be really new and young. Does anybody remember seeing a thing like this? For the uninitiated, it's a thing called telephone. We used to have to call numbers for us to get information on things like, what is the time of the day, or what is the weather looking like? People actually called phone numbers in the US to get to know this kind of an information. Those were the days that existed, believe it or not. And then came the time when, sorry about that. You would think a decade in IT would help me figure out how to use slides. Then we came to our personal computers, which used to take up the whole room. I don't know if you've seen Hidden Figures as the movie, where you actually see those big IBM computers that used to take the entire room. And while today we have computers across, like in my living room itself, I think we have 5 laptops, a fridge that's smart, that there's a wearable device. All of us are wearing sleep rings, maybe. So there's computers available across all of these different devices. And retrieving information has become really simple. We can just check our phones for the weather or the time of the day. You don't need to actually go ahead and call a number anymore. So retrieval has improved over the time. But what has been the missing piece is, for example, I do get to know the weather here in Vancouver is sunny, and I can ask questions about that in Google right now. But I've never been able to ask a machine learning model, or with all of the advancements, whether I should bring an umbrella to, let's say, Toronto. I did hear there were rains there. But if I were to go ahead and ask this question to a machine learning model, it would not answer it back, because it would not be able to answer because it doesn't know who I am, where I am going for. Let's say if this TPMA was happening at a conference in a room in Toronto, it would have to know that I have to actually get to that place by car, or am I walking to the place, and add a lot of human factors for it, like a human feedback. And that was missing up until this time, when we didn't have RLHF, which is human reinforcement learning with human feedback. And that missing piece has been added in ever since 2022, November, when we got to hear more about this worldwide with ChatGPT launching. But the work behind the scenes has been happening from the 1990s. Memory models have existed. We have been working on embedding models for a very long time. And it's only now, when we got a very good product to use it, so intuitively that we have actually been introduced to this particular concept. And today we are able to have that feedback for us to actually move forward and make use of retrieval of information and in a way that is never thought of before. And we have all OpenAI's product team to thank for, which pretty much took the world by storm. They went ahead and had 100 million users in less than 2 months. Meta took 4.5 years to reach the same amount of users. I don't consider Threads right now here because everybody who was on Instagram was already on Threads. They took less than a day. There was also the latest spring update that came up from OpenAI where the Omni model, O stands for Omni, which is able to actually handle more than 8 million English words. That's like 3,000 research papers altogether. And it's also capable of understanding different kinds of languages. You all have heard how English is the hottest programming language. It is soon going to become your own languages that you are comfortable with. And you can basically code in whatever language you want, or just speak like how you all would love to have a Jarvis right next to you that can help you get things done. The thing that I want to tell you about this is we are at a very nascent stage right now. This is the slowest and the worst capable models that you can actually see. Things are going to get a lot better. And as a product community, we need to be aware of what are the different opportunities and the places that can be impacted by this. Not because our problems are changing. As products, from the time that I've been working with data science products in retail or healthcare, the biggest challenge has been not figuring out what new technology can I add in there, because it's not always the reverse way. As product managers, we need to fall in love with that problem, because tomorrow the same problems may be solved with a different technology. When a new model comes up, I might resolve my existing problems that I just solved right now with a better model out there. So in 2023, November, Harvard Business Review had this version of their article that came up saying, oh, field technicians have so many different manuals to get through. There's a lot of information. We have Slack at work. We are bombarded with information. How we make sense out of it? There's that retrieval piece that keeps coming up again and again. Then we thought that GenAI can help us create content. So non-technical people can also create a website. Like, let's say you have a bakery and you actually want to spend time baking good stuff and not worrying about the leads that you have. Or you can go ahead and basically be an expert in a very different language by just saying a natural language command, which gets converted into SQL, and basically tailor make your own set of programs for you, regardless of you being an expert in that language. So this is what we thought. But a quarter later, this March, they launched a second article where I'm just trying to move you guys around. Yeah, these were the top 100 use cases that we were actually started using it for. So it's been 14 months within TELUS itself where we've seen this happen over and over again. A lot of us make use of it for technical assistance because there seem to be so many different articles out there. It has been trained on, GPT has been trained on all of those models. They have image generation models for DALL-E. They do have Codex as the code generation models. So a lot of these developers who have been really quick to start using the API versions have also understood how to use it faster for evaluating all of the different open source documents that are existing there. So an amazing thing about LLMs is that they understand the intent of our words and our questions, break it down into something that it can answer. It might go through 9,000 GitHub repositories that are existing for Next.js, or gazillions of repositories that can go through and help you assist, aid your entire team in a production troubleshooting issue, or there might be content creation, or all of the EdTech has also seen a huge growth in you've all seen the news about Khanmigo, but there's a lot other things that it can help you with. There's a beautiful article written by ACE16Z where it tells you that all of us now have an infinitely patient teacher who can help us out when you say, don't go ahead and give me the answer, but help me learn this. So that learning attitude has been really helpful within our company as well. And I think there are two different kinds of companies. Like, we've never heard of a company coming forward nowadays saying that we are a mobile first company. Just like that, we're not going to have companies saying that we are a Gen AI first company now. It is an entire rethink of the strategy, and what it takes is really strong leadership that can encourage experimentation, because all of this is extremely new. Every single week or month, we have a new way of approaching RAG applications or newer embedding models, or a very or a multi-model embedding model that is available at a much cheaper rate than what we are used to. So being able to adapt to change like that needs very strong leadership. And I think all companies are going to have to transform the way they have been performing. So let's take the example of medicine. So all of us know pharmaceutical companies try to go ahead and do a mass production of medicines. But going forward with Gen AI models and all of these different machine learning models, what they're trying to do is move into precision medicine, where all of us might just give a sample of our blood, and then they will figure out what is missing for us and give us one specific concoction that'll work for my specific body. So these bespoke kind of an application is what is going to be a lot more in demand. This is a chart that I'm showing you from that has been built by Ganesh Padmanabhan, who is the CEO of Autonomize AI. If you've not seen this, I highly recommend seeing his podcast as well. What this shows is that all of us have access to these AI models, and a lot of companies are trying to go ahead and build these commodity applications. Building those kind of products is quite risky, because as you must have seen Apple's WWDC, I think that their launch, they kind of did away with 10 to 15 different companies with one announcement, because all of those smaller companies had commodity applications. Simply using a GPT 3.5 or a GPT 4 API and making your product as a wrapper on top of it and claiming to be garbage trucks.ai, or I don't know, there can be any n number of AI companies out there, but you might be easily replaced. So what can help you stand and what can help you stand the test of time is making sure that your product lies in that uppermost quadrant, which is not just a generic one, but it's a bespoke application. By bespoke, I mean a tailor-made application that works specifically on enterprise data or on very special models. And that is where we see the rise of SLMs, small language models, as well as RAG-based applications. So I'll walk you through more in detail about RAG, but to summarize all of that in one shot would be, know that your problems haven't changed. The technology has definitely changed, but your strategy of your product, your team, and your business at core hasn't changed. Your customers haven't changed. The approach in solving the problems has changed. So your as product managers, you need to be able to be aware of how can I better serve my customers, how can I better bring value in that entire chain, do a value stream mapping for your customer, and understand what are the different areas that can now be positively impacted with this newly available technology. So the first step in this framework that has been shared by Sanjay Srivastava, who's the CTO of Genpact in Forbes, is that, make sure your first thing is your core strategy is intact and you know what problem you're solving for. Fall in love with that. We'll figure the rest out. And the second step is having guardrails intact, we'll get through those in the next one. So this was the crux of it. Gen AI is not anything new it's not an answer looking for a question. It is only going to help you build better products. So for example, like I was mentioning, the pharmaceutical company, there's also one example I'd like to quickly mention is telemedicine. A lot of doctors in the US and in North America all across spend maybe less than 8 minutes, where 4 minutes might be spent talking to the patient, 4 minutes doing documentation for insurance reasons. Now, with generative AI, all of us know text, like whisper models have audio to text kind of conversions, and they can spend 6 minutes now talking to the patient and only 2 minutes on the documentation, because you still have to review the work that's been done. So it is definitely a huge time-saving capacity. Or you can also think of this in how Costco helps you. It tries to figure out what is the best day at which you should ship these products, because for example, berries are the ones that are the fastest moving SKUs. They get stale really fast. I'm sure you've all had experiments with blueberries. I definitely have. They always go stale. But you can insert Gen AI in those small sections of the supply chain logistics wise, so that you can actually increase the number of ways that you collect a lot more data, because large language models can actually process a lot more data. With vector DBs, you can actually go ahead and find out which is the most similar vector, and then figure out what ways can you actually deliver the best value to your customers, be it in the retail industry, be it in telemedicine. In every industry, there's definitely stands a chance for this to be applied. But again, solve for your problem and don't look for a question. And garbage in, garbage out, the same thing works even today. Machine learning hasn't changed. GenAI is not magic. What we have seen is with GenAI models, now that everything has a chatbot on top of its every other website and every other application, we have seen that our data quality is actually fallen down, and we need to make sure that this step 2 is definitely kept in mind. We need to make sure that all of our enterprise data is having those guardrails in place. You mask whatever questions people ask. I don't know why. Our users might come up saying, "Can I put in my credit card number?" Why they would try to do that, I don't know. But if they do that, we need to have guardrails in place to say that, sorry, let's mask your credit card number that you accidentally put in, and then take the rest of your question, convert that into vectors, and get that answered from the vector DB itself. So governance, ethics, privacy, all of these things still hold true. We can't slap these things onto the product after it has been built. We need to think about this right from the start and make sure that it is definitely in place. And all of these things, the reason I've been able to mention this is, again, thanks to the leadership that I've had at TELUS. It's not just a telecom company. There's a lot of agriculture, there's TELUS Health, there's international, there's a bunch of different companies within this one organization that just has one name. And there's been a lot of experimentation that has been encouraged and applauded. And the way we were able to do that final step is because of that kind of experimentation. To build that right tech stack, we had to go ahead and experiment out the hell out of things, actually. Sometimes we started with open source. We quickly realized that we needed a managed one, or we've moved further on to a Canadian-based vector database. So all of these things required different kinds of experimentations. And we began with a very, I'll be showing you demos real quick, with a Slack application that was meant only for our small power users. Maybe 3,000 of our users were inside. And then we went ahead and built it for Google Chat, which was more in terms of the rest of the 90% of TELUS was on Google Chat. So these are all internal versions of ChatGPT that we made it available. But the app 1 and app 2 that you see here listed, we realized very fast that we are reinventing the wheel again. So instead of going and doing it again and again, we went ahead and built in between of this a platform as a product. So my role changed from being a growth PM to a platform PM, where we figured out real soon that it is better to develop it in a way that there are APIs. There are developers who can also make use of the API for their own self-serve use cases. And there were a lot of different AI internal teams that had their own specific use cases. And they could all make use of that same platform, the same set of APIs for vector search, for vector upload, making use of, there were like maybe 35 to 45 different use cases that came up through our accelerator program. And each of these were able to leverage that single solution that we had. So the platform approach was something that helped serve us internally a lot. And we've always had a notion of making sure that it is all as self-serve as possible. But we also wanted to cater to the other end of the spectrum, not just the builders, but also the consumers. And so we ended up also adding no-code solutions and no-code features that helps people build their own AI assistants real fast. So this entire process did not happen in a day. It took us some time, and we ended up building this platform as our MVP. And this was basically built in such a way that there were any LLM that could come tomorrow in the market, we will be able to plug it in. It was a plug and play kind of an approach. And any use case could actually make use of the LLM via the platform. We are all across all of the different clouds as well, AWS, Azure, GCP. So it's a very cloud agnostic hosting. It is connected to a central vector database. Like I mentioned, we're using TurboBuffer, which is a Canadian-based company. And for all Canadian companies, we have that rule that we can't let the data go out of Canadian soil. So this makes it very important for us to make sure that we have that capability. And all of the different data sources that exist for a company. It could be Google Drive, or you all might have Confluence or Jira, different kinds of sources of data that can actually be put into the vector database to actually consume for whatever self-serve applications that you have. But obviously, there's a lot of data engineering pipelines that will be required. I'm simplifying it right now. Doesn't mean it's as easily built, but these data engineering pipelines do take some time to be created for each and every individual data source. And just before this session, I wrote a very small blog real quick. Do check it out. I have talked a lot more in detail about what RAG applications are. I'll put it up in the chat right after this. And one thing I wanted to mention about how RAG applications, when they are being built, how is it different from the usual software products that we are so used to building, is that when you ask a question, if you were to ask that question 100 times, you will receive 100 different answers. Because and that is not a bug. Like if you see this GIF where the dog is getting scared of its own image every time, is trying to communicate that fact that this is not this is the very feature that it is actually being built for. All LLMs are dreaming engines. They are probabilistic engines where they are supposed to give you a novel generation each time, which is why it gets very hard to test. And every time, if you have built something that goes from an MVP to production level, you know all your test engineers would come back saying that, oh my God, this is a different answer. How do you test for it? So there have been different ways to go about doing this. We've figured out that there's also the risk of hallucination, where the reason why it hallucinates is like, again, hallucination is not a bug, it's a feature because it's doing what it's meant to do. It is trying to come up with different kinds of answers. However, in order to reduce that and in order to make sure that you have a robust set of product being launched to production, we need to make sure that again, our data quality is much better. I think we've all realized how our data quality actually goes really down, or it just does not exist. So we've been waiting for RAG applications to be built where we can see that we need to work with technical writers. We need to add a set of document structures for our existing sources and go ahead and do a lot of testing in alpha stages, beta stages before we go to launching the final product in production. So extensive amount of dogfooding is also required for these things. I'll take a pause before I go and jump to the final step in that framework for any questions. And I can also share the blog on RAG because it has a lot more detail. I know I will not be able to cover it. That's why I wrote this blog real quick. Any questions? I'll take a look.
Yeah, we have some questions.
Is there any difference when someone says Gen AI versus LLM?
Yeah.
Not chat focused. Of course. So think of chat just as a superficial user interface. I'm going ahead and muting everybody else because I hear an echo. So to Prab's question, chatbot is not the end all consumption of a LLM. LLMs can be made use of. Think of this as, so chat is just a superficial layer. You could have think of it like tomorrow you go and log into BigQuery, or you log into any interface that you are normally used to. We as a product team love using this phrase called meet your users where they are. So wherever you are, if you're in Slack or if you're in BigQuery, like that's a very complicated data lake or data warehouse offering from Google Cloud, even inside that, you should be able to ask in natural language, what does the next month's sale look like, or previous month's sale look like? And behind the scenes, all of the things that can happen with LLMs and vector DBs will happen. Terraform scripts would run, and then you would get that answer in whatever format you want to see it. If you want to see it in a graph, you will see it in a graph. If you want to see it as a poem or a mail to your boss, you will see it like that. So LLMs have this capability of just wearing whatever persona that you want it to wear. And that is what copilots or assistants are capable of doing. So I hope that answers your question. Again, please never think of it as a chatbot thing. Like that's a misconception. Just one UI. Yes, I see Mayank.
Hey, hi, Julian.
I just wanted to, just because some other people had some questions that were in the chat that I want to make sure that don't get lost as well. If we can quickly go through them. Timmy Wong asks, what are the best user practices for gathering user feedback during the MVP development phase? And what methods do you use to collect feedback? And then we'll go to Peter's question afterwards. Any thoughts about that, Julian?
So what worked for us, I can talk more about that, but obviously every company will work differently. But as I mentioned, we launched first with a Slack application because we were all in Slack. Our team was in Slack. And we had like a power set of users who understood the technology a lot more. The more you understand the technology, the better you're able to leverage it. And they were very open with their feedback and we created these public channels. Within Slack, within GChat, we had a similar approach. We kept creating these public forums where people could just randomly put a screenshot, say, this didn't work, or is this really what is expected? So that feedback was really important for us. And when we had a deployment to Backstage, which is an open source thing that Spotify has built, we use it for technical documentation. We put it in as a plugin there as well. So in that, we had like a basic Google form that people could fill in. But when I say basic, people love writing feedback. If you give them an option, they write their hearts out. I have more than 1,000 from June last year up until today. Like I saw my emails I kind of go through it every day. There are 1,003 responses oddly, and it's across the entire spectrum of it doesn't work to I really loved it. Can you come and give me a talk on during my team's all hands to how to use it much better? So give people the option of a feedback, regardless of where you're building it. People will be happy to share their usage and experience. We can go to the next one.
Absolutely. Okay, so Peter had posted a question, and then afterwards we will move on to Rosie and then Mayank. Peter's Garmitter says, are there embedded data governance as a product? Data privacy and governance are costly, time-consuming functions that take away from the value prop of Gen AI and puts opportunities far behind other faster time-to-market solutions. And then Peter elaborates, essentially, how can this work for companies that don't have unlimited time, money, and resources to build a platform? How can we skip all those steps? Haha.
Lol. We never had that money. All of this was built on the side of the desk initially, but the privacy by design or a consideration or a concern that we had for ethics and governance made us do things in parallel. So I personally have very good relationships with my data and trust office directors, and we build transparently. So we cannot skip these steps. These are super important to ensure that we are not leaking any information or are at a loss with any of these vendors that we try to deal with, because there have to be a legal contract signed with whoever is providing you the model, whoever is storing your data, and all of these governance and segregation of customer data with our data. We built a lot in complete transparency, and there were a lot of times when the DTO would come on, the data and trust office would come back and saying, can we add a pop-up that says a little bit more clearly, like the third time, because we kept having these safety guidelines being put up in all of our applications: do not share your personal information, do not share customer information. But still, when we added the final RAG feature, which allowed people to upload files to their co-pilots or assistants, which I'll be showing you real soon, we again had to add a confirmation pop-up on the suggestion of the data and trust office saying that please confirm before you move to the next step that you have ensured there is no PII or no customer data added onto these files, so that every user of that platform is taking the onus of making sure that this has not been added. And behind the scenes, we are also working with the platforms to always upgrade the platform to programmatically figure out, where can we use Google's DLP or data loss prevention. I think there's a DLP API that we use. There is Azure's moderation APIs. There are a lot of different capabilities that you can use in the market, open source and paid versions of it to handle it behind the scenes with code. But it has to be a two-way, process, and you can't skip these processes. Like you can obviously do POCs in parallel to move forward faster, but make sure that this is done, because every MVP will come to a point where it goes to production. And when it does, that is not the time when you actually say, oh, let me think about governance. Like it's too late by then.
Julian. I think that we'll have to move on with your presentation. Rosie and Mayank, it would be great to be able to get back to your questions afterwards, if that's all right with you. Julian, you have the floor.
Sure. So the final step in that framework was about what kind of roles do teams like these need. We seem to have been doing so much. Just a second, yeah. So the way I've written this is because I really wanted to break the myth that people have to go about looking for AI experts or Gen AI experts, or I think there have been job postings all around for LLM experts, but these things just existed or came into the picture at November 2022, and you can't really have experts in that. So what do you look for when you build a team like this? For people who are really passionate and don't give up when things change. Because when we were building this from May 2023, and in November 6th, when OpenAI had their dev day, we actually had to take a lot of our code, chuck it out of the window, and rebuild from scratch. And guess what we're doing today? Now that it is July or June 2024, we're doing it again. So we need to be able to be okay with uncertainty and a lot of chaos and a lot of change that keeps coming up. So my team consists of data engineers, a lot of cloud architects because of how agnostic the solution is, some product folks, some DevOps folks, some software engineers, a few handful of web developers because of all the different UIs that I have to showcase this in. But it is a mix of all of these people together that are building world-class products like Bard, or they're calling it Gemini, and ChatGPT. All of these things are not built by super experts. We are figuring things out as we go, and it's okay to make a lot of mistakes as we keep building them. Everybody's learning, everybody's trying to figure out, because the technology was never built with one use case in mind. It was just there. And even when ChatGPT launched it, they didn't imagine that that's how it's going to be used. So there is no way that we have all sorted these things clearly in terms of the roles just now. And there's definitely going to be a lot of uncertainty. This is just a DALL-E created image where how do you fish for at a time when there is so much chaos? Just trying to showcase that. So this is going to be true as we move forward as well. And what has worked with us, a few tips that I can share with you is some of the process that we followed in our product team was every Friday we had something called, I call it the Freaky Friday release. Regardless of what stage we were at, we would just go ahead and ship to production and then see how it goes. Like people would voice it out really loudly in Slack or in GChat and say, this doesn't work, or this is how it's supposed to be. And, edge cases would come up and we're like, oh, let's go ahead and do an iterative approach and redeploy something new or a fix or a feature that takes care of n number of problems together in one shot. So because of how diverse our team is, and it's come from a lot of different backgrounds, we had very good results that kept coming up. So and we also try to, because it's a very new thing, we wanted to also make sure people are happy using it. So the delightful features, all of those features that we kept for the last, sometimes we would just pick one randomly and we'll be like, I'm just going to go ahead and build this. And all of our team members, we respect the doers and the builders, like instead of just the people who talk about it. So one weekend, my manager would do something, another weekend, a colleague would do something else. And those were the things that actually wowed the leadership a lot more. And that helped gain a lot of trust, because like, if that is possible, imagine what this team would do with a little bit more funding. Because none of this was actually, thought through and planned for. We just went with the flow. We made sure that we created this safely, and we didn't want to block anybody at TELUS from not using generative AI, as how a lot of companies have done. So creating that platform and those products was super essential, and we were able to get that approach done. Again, like I mentioned, Gemini or ChatGPT, that was not the bar for us. We always used to be thinking for our problems. Like we have a Slack channel where thousands and thousands of messages kept coming, and my team would be on a round robin approach trying to answer those questions. We're like, we should make AI do this. Why are we wasting our time? So we used to always solve for our problems first. We're like, okay, let's just stream the Slack channel messages into the vector DB and then get the answers done. So we don't have to work on this anymore. So these are things that might not be problems for others, and that might end up creating a product that's at a much higher bar than what exists out there. So never belittle your own experiences. There's a lot of great value that exists within your internal teams as well. And I've been talking so much. I know as product managers, we all like seeing numbers. So what we realized was ever since the platform was launched, we had reached a stage where engineering-wise, it is a very strong platform where it was able to process a lot of these requests real fast. This was pretty much, I think, 3 months since the launch. I forgot the months there. So every 2 weeks, we were able to process these many requests. And just in the last month, I think this has increased. I made this slide in May. So this is again increased for the number of queries that have been sent to, like I mentioned, we have 3 to 4 different internal applications. For just one of the internal applications, more than 200 requests per month. So we're able to handle a lot more because as in more teams get aware about these things existing. Like I mentioned, at the final stage this February, we launched a no-code solution where people just fill a form and create their own assistants, or we call it co-pilots internally. And the number stands at 3476. I just checked today before coming in. I didn't update the slides. But what it shows is that even though we have very crappy marketing from our team or zero to minimal onboarding, people have been using our interface. It's user intuitive enough that speaks to our UX on how people have been using this and creating their own assistants and sharing it with the rest of the company. You can share your own assistant that you've made. If you've seen the GPT marketplace, it's pretty similar to that. And we have all of this internally. So you might have a meeting summarizer, or you might have, I don't know, a MacBook reviewer. So a person that I'd interviewed, he had his day job was figuring out which person should get a MacBook or a Windows laptop. He went and built a Copilot to decide that. And he's like, go fill this form in the Copilot. And that's all that people had to do. So there have been different use cases that have come up. So this is a demo that I'm showing where this is a generic internal application that we have built called Unicorn AI. And here, if you had seen in the starting, I uploaded an image that says something that's written on a handwritten whiteboard. And this is like, we had a Toronto Machine Learning Summit just yesterday. So Liz and Sarah were presenting there, and this is their demo. When you upload that image, you can see that there was a document image that came up, and it was able to do an OCR on that image, a handwritten text, and then figure out what's written on that. So Liz and Sarah were excited about Toronto Machine Learning Summit, and imagine that using this for your sticky notes, for your, I don't know, the notes that you scribble when your boss is talking on an email or during a meeting. There are a lot of different areas where you can use images, extracting information from the images. This is a demo for our Slack application where, as I mentioned, a lot of different things happen on Slack every day, and people would like to join it right in between. So there's a huge thread. Instead of going through the entire thread, you can ask this generic Copilot, give me a TLDR. It will go through reading all of those messages and give you a quick TLDR and help you be more productive real fast. So that was one. And this is the feedback option where you can actually say thanks for your feedback. And then I have a form that we have added in here to collect feedback. There's this one on Google Chat that we created, again, because 90% of TELUS is on Google Chat, 1% on Slack. So what we did here was we gave it capabilities like search the internet and generate an image. So these are all new like superpowers that you can add on to the Copilot to make it a lot more useful, because you know how GPT models have a training cutoff date. So here it asks for the weather, and it was able to actually find the weather from a real-time Google search itself. And then it can also go ahead and use its image generation capabilities. So there's think of it like a brain where it actually understands, I have 4 tools in my toolkit. Which of these tools do I need to use to answer the questions that have come up? Do I use image generation? Do I use internet search? Or do I use YouTube transcripts? Or I think there's also something called file upload. So document intelligence. So here it goes ahead and creates that Toronto skyline based on the image. And here it's used, I think it's using DALL-E 3 behind the scenes. So it actually shows up within the chat itself. And real quick, like we have a TCOM bot, which is available nationwide. And we had a KPMG ran some kind of an audit on top of it, which helped us figure out and get this ISO certification for privacy by design. Like I mentioned, you think of those processes first, and since it was built in a platform-based approach, every single application has been built on the platform. As I mentioned, 30 to 45 different use cases have been built. This is just one of them, the TCOM bot. every single thing can actually have that accreditation from ISO certified that you have been built this way. And it is, I think, the world's first for having such a certification being done from ISO. And now, because of all of these numbers and all of these different certifications, it definitely looks like a market fit. And I'll just quickly show this video, which helps you understand how we're launching to market.
You look at the ecosystem, there are so many different LLMs out there, and they all have their pluses and minuses and strengths and weaknesses.
We can't depend on a single provider, and we certainly need an ability to use best in breed.
So that's one thing PLIX does for us, is it gives us that optionality of LLMs.
This framework enables you to literally say, I select that rather than this as a base of your solution. And as new LLMs get released or as new technologies emerge, it should be simple to plug and play and say, well, let's just sandbox our application and just see how it performs.
We were trying to lower the barrier of entry into generative AI.
So those were my amazing leaders who helped us, give their blessings for go ahead and test the crap out of this new technology and go ahead and build this out. So if you're like, I'm just giving you a quick sneak peek into what's going out to the market. This is, again, like I mentioned, we're rebuilding a lot of the things that worked for us internally. This is a lab where you can test out n number of models. Like I mentioned, there are 25 different models. You can set a system prompt for it. You can change temperature settings. You can see what cost exists for it. And again, this is a demo from my colleagues yesterday for Toronto Machine Learning Summit. So they're writing a haiku on this. GPT-4o is responding to it. You can copy this, delete it. You can test this. Technically, it's possible to test infinite number of panels. Panel 1 of 1, you can go ahead and click the plus button to actually make this 5. I think we support 5 different panels here. But all of those are UI and UX decisions that we make with our designers on what's possible and what's not possible. But that is what we are trying to go ahead and end up creating. Before I go on to the next one, I just wanted to share real quick this one. Can you see the Party Rock screen? Are you able to see this?
Yep, we are. Just to mention, we're running low on time. So yeah, just as a heads up.
Yeah, I'll just use 2 minutes to just quickly introduce you to partyrock.aws. You can go ahead and create assistants that I was talking about. Just the way we built Unicorn AI Copilot, you can go ahead and test it out building this. I can actually share it because this is a public one. If I copy this out and put it into the chat, you all can actually test it out today. What it does is let's say you have, as product managers, I know all of you have a part of your work includes creating tickets. So if you were to just, is anybody gutsy enough to tell me a feature that they would like to build? Go for it. Going thrice. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I have a feature in mind.
Yes.
Yeah, so for a product owner or a product manager, like we have to do so many interviews. And if we have like 5 product managers, it's difficult to like share the context. So I feel like this kind of application will be very easy to use to build personas so that we can use those persona for future interviews.
Okay, for various personas, and these are user testing. Like, are you testing out a feature?
Yeah, testing out, and even before the design, during the design phase, like ideation phase.
Just consisting of various personas. Amazing. User personas to conduct interviews. Let's make sure that we are clear enough. And let me go ahead and click play. So this particular, the way I've written this product owner copilot, you can go ahead and see that right at the side is what we refer to as a system prompt or a system directive. Given the feature description, it would generate a list of detailed issues to capture all of the requirements, the edge cases, implementation details, and would follow this approach in like the format. Like somebody asked me a question earlier on, it will wear this persona of answering only in this format. It would come up with an issue title, it would come up with a description, and would also come up with a few acceptance criteria, and would be separated by a single line. So this is pretty similar to what we had given access to internally, where you have the capability of seeing, okay, let's see, there's a user management description, or there's a question description, note-taking
Sorry to interrupt.
capabilities. Sorry.
Julian, sorry to interrupt, but we're actually out of time for your presentation. But yeah, I want, yep, yes?
No, I'm done. Feel free to go ahead and test it out.
Awesome.
There's
Okay.
a bunch of different models that you can try it out with, and this is where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julian. And did you mean to send the product owner co-pilot link to everyone? I'm just making sure.
Yes, I think I sent it only to you.
Okay, perfect. We will post it to the chat for everyone. Thank you so much, Julian. Rudra, again, is a seasoned product manager at Tubi with 6 years of experience building AI and automation products for B2B. Rudra, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ray. So let me quickly share my screen and just let me know if you guys can see my presentation here. Is my screen okay? Cool. All right. So firstly, before I jump into my presentation, thank you to everyone at TPMA for inviting me for this session. I'm really excited to be here and interact with all of you. So going into my talk, I think Julian gave us a really nice, overview around what Gen AI is, what are some of the different aspects involved within Gen AI, and how we really, implement Gen AI in practice. So going into my talk, what I thought is that I will take you through one real, project that we recently did at Tubi, which is in the space of Gen AI. And then I actually broke that down into individual steps that if you are leading as a product manager for a Gen AI MVP, then these are going to be typically the steps that you will also most likely go through, right, along the process. So I'm going to talk about each of the steps that I as a product manager had to go through before we could, build a MVP for the AI product. So these are some of the topics. I'm not going to read all of these, but at a high level, these are some of the topics that I'm going to talk about in my talk today. I think Ray already gave a very nice introduction, so I don't want to waste a lot of time here, but very briefly, I'm from India. I've spent a few years in R&D consulting. Eventually, I moved to Tubi as a product manager. And then, as you see on the right-hand side, there's a bunch of different things I, love doing as well outside my day job. Okay, so let's start from the objective, right? Because before we think about doing anything, we really first need to understand what's our goal. Like, what is it that we're trying to achieve out of, doing this, right? Now, one thing is that, and you'll see this a lot where since Gen AI came into practice, everybody has been trying to, jump into the game, right? Everybody is like, we don't know, but somehow we want to use Gen AI. But the question is exactly how, right? We understand that everybody loves to add AI to their products, but there has to be some real sense. And when I mean that there has to be some real sense, here are two fundamental principles that we should follow before deciding if building a Gen AI product is really the right choice for us, right? So first point, and I think Julian also mentioned on some of this, the AI product should definitely solve a real user pain point, right? So remember that everything starts from our customers. Everything starts from solving a real pain point for our customer. If a pain point is not solved, it doesn't matter whether it's Gen AI or anything, the product will not be a success, right? So that's our first principle. The second principle is that the AI product should align with the overall business goal, right? And this is something that, where Julian was talking about, like, how should we align with the overall business strategy? So every company, every business has their own long-term strategy. And whenever we are trying to conceptualize a AI or Gen AI product, we need to make sure that whatever we are planning to build, that product or tool aligns very well with what the goal for the overall business is. it cannot be something deviating from that, then it won't be a success, or it will not fit in the company's overall strategy. So you also started from exactly here, and then so it starts from a research and discovery phase where we are trying to really figure out that, okay, let's see that what are some of the pain points that exist currently, and from there we want to figure out what we really want to solve, right? Because there are a lot of problems without a doubt. So as a product manager, what I did was basically I started gathering ideas from cross-functional teams, and this is literally like you see mentioned here. So we initially ended up gathering 75 plus initial ideas, right? And this is from across the company. So the process was very democratic. We wanted every single person to a chance to kind of think about what Gen AI tools or what Gen AI products can be built. So we ask everybody that, just share your ideas, right? Whatever it can be something fruitful, it can be something naive, whatever it is, just, share your ideas with us. And we ended up with 75 plus initial ideas collected. From there, so as the next step as a product manager is you have to prioritize, right? I mean, you've got a lot of ideas, but of course, depending on what has the maximum impact, what can be supported, by the resources that we have in terms of both human resources, in terms of money and everything else, we have to prioritize. We have to figure out that, okay, which is the problem that makes the most sense to solve at this stage, right? And then there are four, there are four principles that, as product manager, I typically follow while doing the prioritization. So one is, again, am I solving a core user problem, right? This is again really the starting point. Okay, if I'm solving a core user problem, is it a low cost, low risk, and high impact product, right? And this is more true for Gen AI, which is something very new. That it's very much in the nascent stage right now, like Julian also mentioned in a talk. And we don't want to really aim something which is super big and super far-fetched, right? We want to do something which is quick, which is impactful, and for something for which we can see the impact very quickly, so that we know that, okay, this is something that actually contributes very much to the business, right? And the other advantage I feel of as a product manager to focus on a near term feasible goal is to make sure that if you can make that successful, it gives a lot of confidence to senior leadership, so that after this thing, if you go and kind of pitch a idea which is far-fetched or which is bigger, then it's easy for leadership to get convinced. It's easy for you to kind of really put forward the statement that why this is something that a company should work on. And then the fourth point is, of course, it has to be measurable. We as product managers always know that whatever we are doing, unless and until we can really measure the success of that product, success of the solution that we build, it doesn't mean anything. So that's true for a Gen AI MVP as well. The impact that it has, we should be able to measure it in some way. So coming back to the example from Tubi, so we got 75 plus initial ideas, and we eventually narrowed down to 3 of those problems based on these 4 principles. So going to the next slide. Now, so let me talk a little bit about the idea, and I want to spend a little bit of time here because I guess not everybody might be very familiar with these terms, in the content streaming industry, which is what Tubi is. So I just want to set the context very clearly so that going forward, people really understand what I'm talking about, right? So the idea that I prioritized to tackle was improving Tubi's content delivery pipeline, right? So let me quickly tell you what a content delivery pipeline is. So think about streaming companies like, Tubi or Netflix or Prime Video, right? They have a pipeline in place starting right from when the company acquires a content, let's say a movie or a series or something, all the way before that goes live on the platform, right? So for us as external viewers, it's as simple as we are seeing some movie or series by opening up Netflix or Tubi or Prime Video. But do understand that there is a whole pipeline which is responsible for ingesting the raw content from the studio partners, and then it goes through like, like 5-6 different teams, through 5-6 different processes before it's ready to go live on the platform. So that is what content delivery pipeline means. And within that content delivery pipeline, my focus was to build an internal AI tool that can efficiently process content metadata. So again, let me quickly explain what content metadata is. So content is like, in simple terms, it can be a movie or a series. And the content metadata is nothing but all the information, all the data that we see associated with a content, right? So let's say if I have to give some example, if you think about a movie, the director is a metadata. The cast and crew is a metadata, right? The rating of the movie is a metadata, right? The release year of the movie is a metadata, and so on and so forth. So the idea was to build an internal tool that can efficiently process this content metadata, and I'll quickly tell you why this was very important for Tubi. Okay, so now we narrowed down on the idea. But this was not enough, because when I say content delivery pipeline and processing metadata, this is still a very broad field. We need to narrow down further to define exactly what is the use case, or what are the use cases that we want to solve by building this Gen AI tool. So we went on to ideating the different use cases within this problem or within this idea, right? So prioritize the use cases. There were 3 use cases that I aimed at solving. I'm going to talk here about only one, just in interest of time. So and this is probably the the use case which had the maximum impact. So we named the tool as Rosetta Stone. Just for context, you can Google. I'm not going to a lot of details, but Rosetta Stone is basically the cryptic method that was historically used for studying Egyptian literature. And this is kind of similar if you, once you learn more about this project. So basically try to, let's say, infer certain information based on certain given data that we had, right? So it's kind of a prediction that we are doing here. And I'll tell you a little bit more, like, in a few slides, that what exactly is this project all about. So as overview, our Rosetta Stone is a AI tool that could, automatically review and map title IDs across different ID spaces. And this leads to faster metadata processing. I know I threw a lot of buzzwords there. Can you please mute others? Sorry. So this is a AI tool, that helps in mapping IDs. Now, what I mean by ID is that I'm sure most of you might be aware of like something called the IMDb ID, right? When we watch movies or series, you will see that in most cases, IMDb, there's something called IMDb ID, which is associated with most of this content. IMDb is a database for movies, series, and content like this. And there are other databases as well, which I referred to here by saying different ID spaces. Now, what you see on the right, this is a paper which is public on Medium. I will share the link here in chat. You can, in fact, let me just do that right away before I forget, so that you can go and take a look. Okay, cool. So we published this paper, publicly on Medium, so you can go and take a look. But then coming back to our presentation, so what exactly, what exactly led us to work on this problem, right? Out of all these different ideas that we initially talked about. Now, the reason this problem was, very critical, was because title ID is one of the core assets for managing content, right? So what I mean is that title ID is that single piece of data which is unique for every title and which allows to get other metadata for a certain title from different data sources. Now, why is this important? Because let's say, so I talked about IMDb as a database, which is pretty common database. Now, a given title, when we get that from studio partners, does not necessarily have all the metadata that we need, right? So let's say if there are 10 different metadata that we need for a title, probably the partner will provide us with 4 or 5 metadata. And in some cases, there can be even a couple of inaccurate metadata from the ones they provide us too, right? So there is a requirement that like the team and in Tubi is able to access all these different databases and figure out what are the correct 10 metadata for this particular title, right? Before title can go live on Tubi. And that is important because one, if there is wrong metadata, that will frustrate our viewers. So let's say a simple example can be, there's the, like, let's say there's Titanic, and instead of Leonardo DiCaprio, it talks about, let's say, Tom Cruise as the hero, right? And of course, that's going to frustrate the viewer if they see that. So that's why it's very important to have correct metadata before the title can go live. The other reason is that think about other teams that also use this metadata for different applications. So again, a simple example would be, let's say, the machine learning team who uses this metadata for recommendation. We all know that, when we go to a Netflix or a Tubi, we will mostly see things which we want to see, right? And that's happening because there's a recommendation algorithm going on at the back end who have studied our behavior over a period of time to understand what are the kind of things that we will love to watch. And, the system will basically push only those things to us, right? So if you, for example, see a lot of crime movies, you will see that mostly these are the crime movies that comes right at the top. So machine learning team also uses this metadata for recommendation and other applications as well. So overall, title ID is a very, very important asset that needs to be 100% accurate for all titles. Now, on average, there are around 400 titles that is being processed at Tubi, right? So let's think like every week there are on average 400 titles that's coming in from studio partners that we need to process and make it ready by the end of the week, right? That's in 5 days, which is a lot if you think from a volume perspective. And then for more than 40% of these titles, we do not get an ID from studios, right? So there are two problems, like I was talking a little bit before. For 40% titles, we have no IDs at all. And even for the remaining 60%, for which we might have an ID, it's not 100% guaranteed that every single of those 60% are correct IDs, right? So there is a requirement to freshly get IDs for the 40%, definitely. And out of the 60%, which might have some ID, there's still a requirement to cross-check that, right? And make sure that whatever we have got from the partners, it's indeed the correct ID. So this is like, you can understand that why this problem is so critical for a company like Tubi, and I'd say in general for any streaming platform. So we started by, doing a quick proof of concept, because again, before we really jump in and invest a lot of resources, we want to make sure that at a high level, at least, whatever solution we are thinking, that will work out, right? So we did a quick validation. Validation, of course, like, like as product managers, we do this to check feasibility, identify any top level challenges that might come up, and then obtain some sample test results. Now, coming back to Tubi's project, so we selected around 40K titles by sampling, and then we run our GenAI tool on all these 40K titles, right? And then we wanted to see that the IDs which are being forecasted or predicted by this tool, how accurate they are. So from this test of 40K titles, by running this through our GenAI tool, we are able to achieve accuracy of 95%, which told us that, okay, this tool, like whatever we have built, is, working pretty good. So from here we moved on and we went to designing the MVP, right? Now, few like, principles that like I like to keep in mind with designing is, again, users are the primary center of focus, right? You cannot deviate from there as a product manager. So keep users at the focus when you are designing. Define features in a simple way, do not complicate. And this is something I've learned over time. I would not like, if I'm very honest, there would be a point of time much before when I would think that, like, in order to make a big impact, you need to make something fancy and complicated, which is not the case at all, right? Users love things which are very simple to use. So make sure that whenever you are designing a feature, it's done in the most simplest way. And hence the line, convenience and functionality always wins over fancy. So users don't really want something fancy. If you can build something which is convenient and it serves the purpose, it serves the function, then they will be mostly happy with it. You can make it fancy on top of that, but not at the cost of those two things. And then, this is something, the last point here, this is something one of my designers told me. I like that statement so much that, I try to use it in a lot of my talks. That create a design that let users do less but get more, right? I mean, the idea is always like, don't make users work a lot. A simple example would be, if let's say there's a website where we have to, like, let's say where we have to do 6 clicks in order to get where we are, versus a website where you can get to your destination by on just 2 clicks. Of course, most of us will like the latter one, right? So this is something that I always try to keep in mind, like whenever I'm designing a new product, that uh create a design that allows users to do less but get more. Okay, so now coming to the development, and this is where I'm going to spend some time, so that I'll try to this is again, by the way, taken from the paper that I shared earlier. You can go through that, but I'm going to take some time here to convey like what exactly we did, right? So we talked about a GenAI tool that can predict the title ID for a given content, movie or series or whatever, right? So now let's break down from there. So what we did was we created our own embedding, which we are calling as Rosetta Stone embedding. People here might already be familiar with embedding, but might not be as well. So I'll just give a quick understanding of what a embedding is. Embedding is nothing but, in simple words, how do you convert text into numbers, right? I mean, AI doesn't really like process in text, it processes in numbers. So when we are saying embedding, it's as simple as saying that if I pass a string, so let's say I say umbrella or I say cat, AI will understand that in a form of numbers. That's exactly what embedding means. So what we did here was we said that, okay, let's create our own embedding database called Rosetta Stone embedding. And what it will have is basically, you know, all the all the all the titles that we have, and along with that, the different metadata associated with the title, which we have in store with us, right? Now, when I say different metadata, as you see here, these are the different metadata that we use. For example, the title name, this is the release year, director, cast, genre, and summary. Summary is just like a description of what the content is all about. So these are the different metadata we used. And then, of course, there's a reason why we particularly wanted to use these 6, because we did some optimization and we figured out that, these are the 6 metadata which kind of like works the best when it comes to building a model on top of this and then doing a prediction by using that model. So that's how we did some optimization and figured out that these are the 6 metadata that we want to use. So we created our own embedding. And then what will happen is, if I can actually quickly, I'll go back to the paper. I couldn't put everything on the slide. So yeah, so what is happening here is, if you see, so all this metadata is getting embedded here, right? So the titles, the year, the directors, the cast, the genres, and the summaries. So we have the embedding database here. And now when a new thing comes in, which is, let's say, a title, this is converted to its embedding compared with this embedding database, right? And then we're doing something, again, some of you might be already familiar, some of you might not. There's something called a KNN method, which is the nearest neighbor technique of understanding like a predicted value. So we are doing a KNN method to compare this embedding of the new title, which don't have ID, with the embedding space that we created, right, based on our library and metadata. And then based on this comparison, we are throwing a hypothesis saying that, okay, it seems based on this comparison that this this title probably has this particular ID, right? And then when we are doing this, we're also throwing confidence intervals. So we throw generally 3 confidence intervals where it's like, if it's above 90%, so then, we can pretty much count on the data output and say that, okay, like whatever the tool predicted, that has good confidence, which means mostly that should be correct, right? And then there can be lower confidence intervals as well, in which case we will need to do human checks. So that's the process we thought about. Anything above 90% or so, then we are good to go. If something is below that, then we will need humans as guardrails to do that final validation and really make sure that what the tool is predicting, it is indeed correct, right? So this is pretty much like, what we developed as the backend technology. One question that might come in later, so I thought I'll just address it right now, which is, did we, for building this technology, did we sort of like build our own AI? That's not the case. So we just build it on top of, like, the existing generative AI platforms. We used GPT 4 to do this. And this is by the, I mean, in case any of you interested, I was talking about different ID spaces. So these are the different ID spaces, and what we are doing is basically connecting these different ID spaces so that instead of a human requiring to go to each of these ID space and figuring out the different metadata based on the title ID, now, like, this tool takes less than a second to do all of that and figure out all the 10 metadata that's required for a given title, right? And this is happening for, like I said, 400 titles every week, so you can understand the volume and the scale. Yeah, so this is pretty much what we developed. This is the backend technology. So I'll come back to the slides here. So yeah, we have to talk about results. So once this MVP was kind of launched, and people started, the metadata team started using it at Tubi, we were able to map ID to 7.5K plus titles, which initially didn't have any ID. So for 7.5K plus titles, for which we did not get any ID from our partners, we were able to get the correct ID for all of them using this tool, right? And this saved 6 months equivalent worth of effort and time. So this is like actually huge if you think, because this process could be handled by this tool, the team was actually able to invest, like, time and effort into other critical areas where human judgment, right, where qualitative judgment is more necessary. And this is especially true for a streaming platform where, there's a lot of subjectivity around things like, a simple example that comes to my mind right now is that, let's say there is a film which has both essence of drama and crime, right? Now, do you really call this a crime movie or do you call it a drama movie, right? Um, so there's a lot of areas in a content streaming industry where human judgment is very much necessary. And that's what we are able to invest in today, because, now we have a tool like Rosetta Stone, where we are leveraging AI to get all that process automated. So this was, like I said, I mean, this was like, pretty much in the news. My team was interviewed by Amazon AWS at the NAB conference, which is one of the largest media and broadcasters conference in the US. So we got some recognition there as well. So I think I'm at the end of my talk. So I'll highlight the key takeaways from this experience of, like, building this AI MVP as a product manager. So I think at the core, there are really 3 things that I learned. So first of all, again, select a problem that matters for the customer, that matters for the business, right? High impact, low hanging fruit. That's the way I call it. So, try to do something which could be achieved relatively faster, through which you can show immediate value, because that helps a lot in convincing leadership that, this is the direction that we should invest more on over time. Build a product that's intuitive and, that seamlessly integrates into a workflow. This is again a very important point. don't build something that will totally mess up the current process, right? Users don't like that. Nobody likes change. This is a fundamental truth we have to accept, right? If you are used to doing something for 5 years and today I come and say that, look, there's something new I built, but unfortunately we have to do everything in a different way, they will be like, I don't care, right? I'm totally happy using the old tool. I don't want to use your tool, however good or bad that is. So try to build something which can easily integrate within the existing workflow, which does not make the user feel that, they have to like do a lot of new learning, right? Of course, there has to be some training. We also had to do some training with this new tool that we build, but then that should be minimal. Users shouldn't feel like they are completely taken out by surprise or anything like that, right? And then last point, but very important point, develop a robust and scalable AI infrastructure, which is very important. I think Julian also talked about this towards the later half of our call that, things are moving very fast as we see. Like we have GPT-4o. I think GPT-5 will also come out pretty soon. And there are a lot of models, lot of improvements in LLMs that are happening over time. So we have to make sure that the way we build is scalable. We don't really want to be in a position where we have to disturb everything and again build from zero, ideally, right? So it should be more of like I think I like the word that Julian mentioned, which is like plug and play, right? So your entire thing is kind of, the unit is consistent, and then you can just plug in the AI component and the thing works. If something needs to be changed, it's just that AI part that you need to improve, while the rest of the things still work the way they were working, right? And in fact, as I speak today, whatever I showed you, it's already undergoing the next level of development. So this thing was launched 2 months back, but it's already going change, right? We are trying to improve. We are trying to see how better we can do the prediction. So yeah, things are very fast right now, and you have to be adaptive and flexible. Yeah, so I think that was the end of my talk. Hopefully, I know there's a lot I talked about, but hopefully there's some value I was able to add to my presentation. Happy to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. You can visit my website as well, which is learnwithrudra.com. And yeah, thank you to TPMA once again for having me. And then I'm looking forward to any questions that you guys might have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rudra. The first thing I want to say is I want to give a very brief thank you, to the AI PM community of practice at TPMA, which includes, Anna-Roza Tamas, Pallavi Gupta, Pratik Joshi, Similoluwa Bolaniran. I'm also part of that group as well. And we did post a link to the survey. So if you have a chance to fill up the survey, that it would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate it. We read it. So Rudra, it was a really inspiring example that you shared with us. The specifics of what you were working on at Tubi, high impact, low-hanging fruit. I love that formulation. You start off with 75 ideas, and you distill it all the way down. This was too broad. That was too broad. This is just specific enough. The title IDs, high impact, low-hanging fruit. That's incredibly inspiring. And the fact that you walk away at the end, having saved 6 months of equivalent time and effort. I love the specificity of that. It's a very inspiring example. It feels as if it's kind of like we're bringing things right down to earth. This is what it looks like. So I want to absolutely throw open the floor to people who have questions. Maybe Rosie has a question. Or maybe Mayank has a question.
Yeah.
If you do for Rudra, please do raise your hand. It would be great to be able to have Rudra answer your questions now.
Yes, I have a question regarding so these kind of AI generative projects are you have to continuously build on them, and they take resources even after you have built features. How do you manage that it is not taking too much of time later on? How can you start building in such a way that it doesn't take too much time in maintaining those things?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Rosie. So I think there are a couple of sides to it. So one thing is that firstly, you need to build this in a way so that you don't have to change a lot of things, right? When these improvements in AI is happening. So that is one principle that you should keep in mind. Now coming down, so okay, like rest of the things are fine, but then things are changing within AI. So how do I, if I have to keep up with that, we have to, update our models and all those things as well. So I think it really, like there is firstly no doubt that trying to maintain something like this will take some resources and investment and all of that. But I think like from a business perspective, if you think, if you can show that by doing this, there's actual real value that you can add for customers, there's actual real impact that you can make on your business, business is going to invest, right? It's always like, if you go back to the very simple thinking that we used to do before as well for our projects, there's a term we often use called cost benefit analysis, right? Where we are saying, or think about return on investment, right? So we are thinking that, okay, I know that this is the cost that I have to bear if I have to do this or if I have to maintain this going forward. But the benefit that I get out of that, is that sufficient, right? Is that sufficiently large? So if you can, so the impact, for example, that I talked about, where by doing this in a split moment, I think this entire thing running was took like less than like probably some minutes. And that did the work which otherwise would have been done by humans taking 6 months, right? So if you can bring that kind of skill in the impact, then I think like it's not very difficult to convince business that this is something that we should invest in and continue maintaining, continue updating with the changes happening. So it's all about like, if you are planning to build a Gen AI or a AI product in general, again, like it should be something that's feasible, that's a low hanging fruit, but make sure the problem is big enough. That's a very, very important point, because if the problem is not big enough, then there are chances, like you said, that after one point the business might decide that this is not something worth investing. And I'm not getting into a lot of details, but that has happened to us at Tubi as well. So we have had worked on something which, initially we thought were very exciting, but then beyond one point, we did understand that the problem is not big enough. It's not really adding a lot of value for our viewers. And then we decided to kind of do away with that. So we are not working on that anymore, right? So it's a very real issue that you talked about, but I think that's the way to go forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I do see like added, as you're adding more context to it, you're paying more for running those models as well.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So we have Tiba and we also have Mayank on deck. I'd like to actually jump to Mayank's question first, because we didn't get to Mayank's question before. So Mayank, you have the floor, and then Tiba, thank you so much for your patience. We will move to your question after. Mayank.
Thanks, Ray. A great presentation, Rudra. Just wanted to ask you about LLM specifically. When you're choosing LLMs, how do you like decide based on cost? What, which like LLMs would you be using? And like also, I'm trying to understand more around embedding. So how does that work? Is it essentially a way of querying data faster, or there's more to it?
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Mayank. So coming to your first question, I think that's if I have to be very honest, that's something, that decision really happens at the leadership level. So we have our machine learning team, who is of course like the core team when it comes to handling AI, right? So we have the machine learning leadership, and then we have our general senior leadership team at Tubi, who are really kind of digging up all that analysis to figure out that, okay, we have these different LLMs provided by, these different organizations, and which one we really want to go with. And based on that, we actually, did a partnership. I'm not sure if I am openly allowed to say that, which is why I'm not saying the name, but then there are, these different, we have Bard and we have OpenAI and all of this. So we have actually partnered with one of them. after doing all that analysis and figuring out that, okay, which is the one based on our requirements that we feel that, we can go with. So that's the decision that really happens at the top level. That your second question, like what embedding? So embedding is like a saying, like think, very simple terms like we as human beings, we are comfortable with text, right? We are comfortable with strings. What we are saying right now, these are strings. These are like words, right? That we are using. AI, however, doesn't really understand what so much. So what it does is really these words that we are speaking, or let's say a string or a text that you are typing, AI is basically converting that to numbers, right? So let's say, for example, again, this is some random example I'm giving. If you type dog, it can be something like 0.9, 0.4, 0.3, right? Something. So it's basically, so for AI, there's nothing called dog, right? AI understands that there's something called 0.6, 0.2, 0.3, which is equivalent to the string called dog, right? And then whatever instruction you are, let's say, trying to write to a AI, every single word that you are typing, all of these basically have been converted to embeddings at the back end, right? And then what AI is doing is really kind of trying to match the words that you have typed, converted to embeddings, with the overall embedding database that it has. So when I'm saying that, let's think about DALL-E, for example. I say that, okay, I want a picture of a dog in a park, right? So all these things from here, it's converted to embeddings at the back end, and then OpenAI or DALL-E is understanding that, okay, by dog, it searches up its embedding library and it understands that, okay, these three numbers basically represents this kind of images, right? And then the park is the other main word here. So same thing happens with park as well. And based on that, it throws you some sample images, right? Showing a dog in the park. So that's exactly how embeddings work.
Gotcha.
Okay, lightning fast question from Tiba. Thank you so much. Tiba,
Yeah,
lightning
it's
fast
perfect.
question.
It aligns with this question. So embedding is vector, or like it's the same?
Embedding is vector, yeah.
And then vector is part of RAG process?
I think it is. I'm not very clear on this, Tiba, so I don't want to really randomly come in, but I think so.
Okay, great. That was my question. It was a similar one, so I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiba. I'm afraid that we are going to have to wrap there. There was so much, in your presentation that I think really kind of brought out, excitement, engagement from us. Like I know that it did for me. And I just want to say thank you so much, Rudra, for sharing with us your example at Tubi. And with that, I want to say thank you to everyone, for being able to make it today. This has been our biggest event yet. Thank you. Please fill out, if you haven't had a chance, the event feedback survey, which we have been pasting into the chat. Just a few minutes, to get back some feedback. We really do read these, and we appreciate it 1000%. So thank you to Rudra. Thank you to Julian. Thank you to the rest of the team, at the AI PM Community of Practice at TPMA. We'd love to be able to see you, online, on LinkedIn, in our Slack, and continue the conversation. We have some very exciting events coming up. We also have a social coming up. We know we love to be able to geek out, and we know we love to be able to hang out. So thank you so much. I hope very much that we will be seeing you soon. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.